So, following asexual reproduction, we had this evolutionary development of sexual reproduction. So this allowed animals and plants to gain some genetic diversity. So there are advantages, obviously, to going to sexual reproduction, and there are disadvantages. But no spoilers, we'll get there at the end. So, sexual reproduction requires meiosis, which we also looked at earlier in this unit. And so meiosis allows for the production of gametes, and it allows for genetic diversity to develop within that gamete formation, and therefore then when you mix gametes together, you get further diversity and variation within your species. This allows life to evolve much more quickly, to change and adapt to changing environmental conditions. So massive plus. Life begins in water, so sperm and egg need to swim. And so we have a coral dumping thousands or millions, billions of sperm and egg into the sea at the same time, with the hope they might find each other. And they do in enough numbers. So in this case, we're looking at masses of sperm and egg, huge energy costs involved in doing this. But they've got to find themselves in those ocean currents. It works. In this case here, the fish have developed a slightly better method for trying to make sure this happens. And fish and frogs are very common users of this particular method, where the sexual courtship behaviour, frogs jumping on the back and clasping and creating egg loss. So the female here has left her eggs, her caviar, if you like, and then the male will come along and add his sperm to the top, and they'll develop. So they'll need to find themselves a reasonably quiet part of the stream. They may well try and cover that in rocks as well to try and give the chance for these things to survive, because all the little creatures that live in the water are going to be looking for that protein source. But again, the female will dump thousands of eggs, the male will dump tens of thousands of sperm, and all you need is a few to survive the whole process, and you've replaced yourself. But again, it's this idea, having evolved in the oceans, the sperm and egg need to swim to each other, need to find each other in water. So it becomes a bit of a problem when we hit land. And I must change that photograph because that's two frogs clasping, and they don't, of course, have a penis to enter a vagina. But anyway, many animals have developed the ability to deliver their sperm inside the female. So the sperm can then swim through the channels, through the uterus and fallopian tube, and find the egg, which is also spinning and being flushed forward with internal motions, so they meet each other. So of course, in mammals we developed complex systems, being a complex evolved species, and so the penis is used to deliver sperm that's been grown in the testes. So there's testes here in the scrotum, that's matures here. The meiosis is going to occur down here, travels along the vas deferens, gets a whole lot of different chemicals added to it as it comes through the Cowper's gland and prostrate and seminal vesicles and things, and then is delivered from the end of the penis into the vagina. So in the female, there's an organ, the vagina, for the penis to sit in, try and deliver the sperm at the base of the uterus, called the cervix. So the sperm can swim its way through the uterus, up into these fallopian tubes, and the eggs are coming down back the other way. And they'll meet. Hopefully, they're meant to meet in the fallopian tube in mammals, for there to be success. But that's a whole internal construction that was needed because life moved to land. So reptiles and birds and mammals needed to develop these systems on land for this purpose. Flowering plants are the same thing. So plants originally, of course, were using asexual reproduction, as we talked about in the last part of the topic. And then they evolved flowers. And the flowers actually evolve sexual reproduction before animals do. In this case, we've got male parts where the pollen's made. So we've got a gonad, a producer of gametes. The gamete, in this case, the pollen. This is the anther on the end of the stamen. And then the female part, there's an ovary with ovules in it and a style. And then a little stigma at the top. So the idea is that the pollen find the top of the flower, top of the style, this sticky stigma area, and they basically drill their way down through this soft tissue and find the ovules. And then that ovary becomes the fruit of the plant. And we'll look at that with some different plants in an experiment in class. So again, the big important part, of course, is the takeaway. So there's advantages to doing this. This is a much slower process. It requires a great deal more energy. So you'd expect there's going to be some good takeaways. And the big takeaway is genetic diversity. There's genetic diversity in the gametes that each individual is producing, and then there's genetic diversity produced by those gametes mixing, randomly assorting. Which means if there is change in your environment, you have the ability to adapt. So if I've released myxomatosis into a rabbit population with the intent of killing rabbit population, 95% of rabbits will be susceptible to myxomatosis and die. 5% won't. 5% will have a protection conferred genetically on them, and they'll survive and adapt to a changed environment, an environment full of myxomatosis. So we've still got rabbits. Disadvantages? Well, you've got to find a mate. And for some species in small numbers, that can be actually quite difficult. And if you can't find a mate, then you can't reproduce. So we saw parthenogenesis as a system in some simple animals that gets around that problem. It's a much slower process than asexual reproduction. And depending on whether you lay eggs or develop the young internally, it can be quite a long process. So elephants are about 22 months. We're about 9 months. Some of the small marsupials are, the days between fertilization and a joey popping from the pouch. So it all depends on size and the environment they live in. And you also get fewer numbers. You generally have much fewer individuals successfully produced by this process. So asexual reproduction, heaps of stuff being used. In this case, very few coming out of the process. But they contain diversity, and that's the big win. And that's that.